Today we're going to talk about the loop. Okay, here's the program, simple program that I wrote for toys. So it basically takes a number, let's say 9, and then it prints out basically 9 stars. You can print out 100 stars if you want. You can print out 1,000 stars if you want. You can print out 10,000 stars if you want. Okay. So now let's think about how to write that program. So far we learned about how to use variables and then how to use branches. But these tools are not really beneficial for us, useful for us, because, well, how do you use the if statement if you want to print out like 10,000 stars? Well, then, maybe you have to stop. Well, first of all, you have to write like 10,000 if statement, and then 10,000 more if statement, and then you have to stop when actually it reaches the point. But that's not really interesting, and it should be really boring. So we're going to introduce a new tool, loop. So this is really hammer or drill. It's a power tool. That's a very powerful tool. So this is used when conceptually you want to implement the idea of repeating similar tasks. Okay. So when you want to repeat similar tasks, loop is the right tool to use. So one of the most commonly used tool loop is while loop. Okay, so while loop looks like this. While this. So here, while this is true, keep running this. So that's basically the rough idea of how to use while loop. So more specifically, let's talk about like some detailed code flow. So let's think about the code, okay? And let's think about how the program runs this code. So obviously, from here, part 1 will be executed, and then the code will run 2, and the expression 2 contains basically something that evaluates true or false. So for now, let's assume this is evaluated to true. Then if it is true, while keep running 3, while 2 is true is basically the rough idea of like while loop. So that means if it is true, 3 is executed, and when 3 is done, you go back to the beginning of the while loop. So again, you run 2. Let's say this is again true, then you go back to code 3, and then go back to 2. And let's say at this moment, this somehow becomes false, and then now it exits the loop because 2 is false, then 4 is executed. Okay, so that's the code flow. So now let's think about how to use the while loop to write this code. Okay, stars.c. Okay, you have to start with include IC210.h, and then main function. Okay, first thing to do is, well, you have to print out how many. So f put s, how many. Let's give some space. And then what? Well, you have to read user input. Let's say n, read num from standard in. So far you got n. So you want to repeat how many times? N times. So how do you do that? Well, let's think about having some another variable I. Okay, so let's say I is starting 1, and then I keep increasing the counter I. Let's worry about that later. Okay, and then in the loop, what you are repeating is basically printing out 1 star. Okay, so now what you have to do is, the idea is increase I by 1. So it starts 1, and then next time I becomes 2. So that means while I is at most n, you do this. Okay, what I missed is this. I have to put us with a new line. So let's try and compile. Okay, remember, if I don't give minus O option, A dot out is the default output. How many? 10. Okay, that's very cool. Let's do another thing. 100. Okay, good. Let's add some more interesting stuff. So it's hard to find out what is it? How many things? There's so many stars. To actually find it easier, let's say after 10, every number that is a multiple of 10, let's say printing out something different instead of the star, so that we can actually check. So I will use this sign. Okay, so how do you check when I is a multiple of 10? Then you can use this trick, right? So if I is a multiple of 10, what will be the remainder? Remember, the percent sign is the remainder. This should be 0. So that's the trick to say if I is a multiple of 10. If it's multiple of 10, what do? You print out this one instead of the star. Otherwise, you print this. Good. So then let's compile that. How many? 21. Okay, seems like it's working. 33. Okay, that's good. Well, you don't need to get only one number, so I'll just repeat this 3 times. So how many? Well, 3 numbers. Give me 3 numbers, right? Okay. Then you can read 3 numbers, right? So let me just repeat that. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Well, we need to declare a variable only once, like that. Okay, then 3 numbers, 5, 10, 23. Okay, so some kind of histogram is taking place. Actually, we're repeating things. That means you can actually put these things in the while loop as well. What does that mean? Well, J is 3. Let's say J is 1. It's 3. Then You do that and push it. So remember, it's a block, and then what's inside the block can be any code. So it can be if, it can be while, whatever. Okay? So now basically run this code 3 times. What's missing? This is missing, right? Remember, J++ is basically the same as J equals J plus 1, the same as this. Okay? So let's do that. 3 numbers, 3, 500. Looks good, right? Well, you don't need to get only 3. You can be more flexible. So then maybe how many numbers? Right? And then you can read M as how many numbers? And then give the numbers, please. Something like that. Okay, now what you need to change is this. Oh, what's wrong? There's a problem. Puts. Okay. So if you do that, how many numbers? Let's say 6 numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10. Yeah, looks good. Okay. While inside the parenthesis, you have to put some Boolean conditions, and then inside the curly bracket, you have to put the code you want to repeat. Okay, so then while 2 is true, you're going to keep repeating the tasks of 3. Okay. I also point out that the notion of scope applies here too. So if you look at the variable I, the scope of variable I is up to here. So that means variable I is visible in that scope. So if you do, let's say, puts, no, right num I std in. If you do that, sorry, if you do right num I std out, and then try to compile, see, there's an error. So if you look at the error message, it says I is undeclared. It's the first use in this function, right? So that means I is not visible in this scope. So the rule of scope applies. Of course, the scope of J is up to here. Up to here. So if you print out, if you do the right num J, you can actually see what J is. Okay. Many numbers, 3 numbers. Then you see the C3. If you write num J, then let's do formatting. Then, okay. So then if you compile out, how many numbers? 3, and that's 10, 100, 5, no, 80, 84. And then you see number 3 there. So the rule of scope applies. It compiles well. Okay. Okay, there is one more issue you need to be careful about, which is infinite loop. So let's go back to this TOEI program. Remember, it basically runs this loop n times. So I is 0, I is 1 up to n minus 1. This is true. So that means this will be running n times. That's good. But somehow, let's assume that you conveniently forgot about this. So your idea is, okay, I create a counter. I have to check I have to make the condition size less than n. Okay, that looks good. So it'll be probably running n times. I put f put c, and you forgot about incrementing the counter at all. Okay, now let's compile that. Okay, and how many? Okay, I'll just like print out 3 stars. Well, it's not the case. What's going on? So the thing is, now let's think about it. I is 0, and then the program got n from you, so n is 3. So I is 0, n is 3, so this condition is true, you get in. So the program prints out 1 star. You're done, move back, and check the condition. And then again, I is never change it. So I is 0, again, n is 3, true, go back again and again. So that means this condition is always true. That means the while loop is always running, never ending. So that means what? If there is an infinite loop going on in your code, make sure whether your condition is becoming false at some point or not.